We should start with how many brothers and sisters do you have?
I have my twin, Rosemary, oldest brother, Chuck, Dave. There was another brother that died at 18 months. His name was William Theodore, Christine, and that's who I grew up with in Shelton.
And Warren, what did your dad do, like, for living occupation? Was he always in the dairy? Or?
He was always worked for Dairy Gold. He started to pick up milk out in Shelton Valley when he moved to Shelton, and he picked up milk from all the farmers, and then Dairy Gold bought him out, and he managed that Dairy Gold plant for I'm not sure how many years, till they closed.
So how about Dottie? How did her and Warren meet?
Mom used to work at a bank, and Dad was very shy. He would follow her home in a car, going real slow. And finally, one time she stopped him and said, "Is there something I can help you with?" And after that, they ended up dating, and obviously they got married. So that's what I've heard.
So when you look back at dinner time with your family growing up, what was it like, or what did your mom make that you really just loved so much?
You know what? When we grew up, Dad worked all the time. Mom worked. And Chuck and Dave were 8 and 7 years older, so I don't recall a lot of the big sit-down dinners. It was always something quick and easy, like what we had a lot of was hamburger gravy on toast, tuna fish gravy on toast, and a lot of clams. Mom, we'd go to the ocean and dig clams and come home and grind them up and make clam chowder and clam fritters, and that's what I recall.
That's cool. I have some footage of Grandma Kay at the ocean when we were kids.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, she loved the ocean.
Yeah. Tell us about your relationship with your older brothers.
You know,
Chuck
like we talked earlier, they were older, and I drove them nuts because I always wanted to be, me too, Charlie, me too, Dave. And it's like they didn't want no part of me. I was just a little ornery little kid. But one thing I do remember, they used to tickle me. One time they tickled me, and I recall them saying, "I think we better stop. He's turning blue." So they left home pretty early. So that's what I recall about that.
Yeah. Did you guys have any pets growing up?
We always had strays. If there was a stray dog, we would inherit it till it got run over, and
later on in life, you run over the stray dogs.
Which I continued that throughout my life.
Oh, yeah.
But
so did you ever work in the dairy, do anything with dairy?
I did one year. Dad wanted me to, I did good in school, and then I went to work at a grocery store, and I kind of didn't really get into school like I should have. And Dad offered me this job at the dairy for, back then, it was a lot of money. And I took it, and of course he laid me off in the fall when school started because he wanted me to focus on school, which I did. So, but I remember I wanted to make my dad happy.
Yeah. And
I was getting sick, and I never said a word. And I kept working. And the last thing I did, I unloaded some ice cream in these 5-gallon containers, put it in the freezer. They all fell over. I had to go in with a shovel and pick up all the ice cream. Oh, no. I went home. They took me to the hospital. I had, it doesn't sound good, but I had septic throat, but it's very severe. And I was in the hospital for, I forget how long, but it was quite a while.
Wow. What was it like? You were a Shelton High climber. What was high school like in Shelton?
Like I said, I went to work when I was, a sophomore. Did a little track. I like track. I pole vaulted. And we had a guy on the team that beat Casey Kerrigan, who went on to the Olympics in the early 70s. But this Mike Johnson was his name, was in all sports and got his knees hurt and never achieved anything with that.
Did you have any best friends in high school?
In high school, it was John Dickinson in high school, because the family would party every weekend, and I didn't want to be around the parties. Back in those days, a lot of families, they'd get together and drink the weekend, and so I'd go out in the canal and stay with John. And
so as you migrated to the Tri-Cities, what made you decide that you want to go start a mobile kill truck and do slaughter?
Because when I came over here, after the service, after Vietnam, I really didn't like working for anybody. And somebody would rub me the wrong way, and I would look for other employment, which was always readily found. And so after all these jobs, I went to work for Irrigation Rentals. Leanne and I were married. That was 1973.
Oh, it's fine, Mom. 73.
No,
So
74.
that's Cudahy, right? That's the story of Cudahy. Well,
I met Leanne at Cudahy, but that was 72.
72.
And I was shipping foreman out at Cudahy Meat Plant. Leanne was a receptionist.
So you were around meat processing, and then who was the guy that kind of you went on learned to have the trade of mobile slaughter with? What was his name?
Oh, he was a good Findlay boy. Jim Brown was his name.
Jim Brown.
So when I moved out to Findlay and moved into the old house, I used to help him and learn how to do it. And then when we got married, I decided I want to build a truck.
Tell me about that. I'd love to know more about the yellow truck and how it came together.
How it came together. First of all, the guy I worked with at Irrigation Rentals, we were salesmen, and we went to Boardman one day working on Simtag Farm. Simplot and Tigueres were building a big farm down there. And so talking to Bill Underwood was his name. His brother, Bob, who eventually ran Prouser Lockers and bought it, was having a slaughter truck built in Moxie. And so Bill and I came home from Boardman, drove down into Kennewick, and there was this yellow truck, a Hertz rental truck, for sale on a lot. And I said, well, I think I'll buy that and build a truck. So that's what we did.
I know there's footage of you doing slaughter on the yellow truck. I don't think I have it in my library of digital stuff right now. But did you work all by yourself on the truck? And when did you? That was 74 when you started doing mobile slaughter.
The last part of 74, probably December. And full time, I used to work on the Finley shopper, had an old truck. So while mine was being built, I worked with the Finley shopper.
Did Grandma work there at the time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she did.
As the business has grown over the years, what are maybe some things you learned that first 5 years or 10 years? I know we were all little kids and you were out killing and doing the hay, and you had some other things besides just the kill truck. But
Yeah.
maybe you could tell me what are the other things that you did as kind of a side thing while you were killing.
Basically, I just worked a lot. I did the slaughtering, and then we were haying. Irv and I were cutting and baling hay, which would run into the busy season. I stayed busy working most of the time.
Yeah. How about when you decided, as you moved from locations, maybe you could tell us about the different locations, the Knutzen's meats and processing, and kind of how it started to be more than just the mobile slaughter.
Well, the truth be known, I was drinking a little bit back in those days. And this one shop that people would ask me where to take their meat. I would recommend them all the time. So I loaded them up all the time with beef. So when my dad was dying of cancer, I wanted to give them a beef over there that were Rosie and Dave were taking care of Dad. And the guy that had the shop wouldn't give me a deal. Well, I got a little upset. And from that point on, I decided, well, I'm going to do my own thing. So then that's how that came into motion.
And from my memories, I remember dumpster diving for donuts and
Oh, yeah.
and helping Mom stamp. I think Julie was there at that location. Was that on 4th?
That was on Columbia Avenue. So when I first started, my cousin and I, Mike Dronin, who cut meat for years, leased a little shop, and I was butchering for Mike out on Dent Road in Pasco. And the people that owned that place were killed in a car crash. And my cousin didn't want to do that, so he was working at grocery stores and cutting meat for stores. And so when I decided to start cutting and wrapping, I leased that little place. And that's where I jumped into it at. And I would hire meat cutters, and I would do the slaughtering and bring it to them. And it was a real small place, and we'd run out of room. So then, as you well know, we leased another place to hold cattle. And I don't know if you remember holidays, we would go pick them up downtown Pasco and then haul them out into the blocks to that shop on Dent Road.
Yeah, I just remember there was some kind of chamber thing that elevator, and maybe there was some plastic cow or something like that was there.
Yeah. Well, after Dent Road, it just became too small, and that place I'd leased to hold cattle and take them out to Dent, I ended up leasing that and leaving Dent Road. So then, yeah, we moved into Frank City Meats right across from the old post office, which had an elevator, which you'd unload the cattle,
yeah,
drop them down into the basement, and then take them into coolers. There was a tracking system.
So over 40 years of meat processing, what's your impression of meat in the time of COVID and the time of how do you think our business is special and unique to help feed people? And
well, that shows you how important it is, because when COVID hit and packing plants got sick, the mobile slaughter guys were still going, and people want to go back to the old way and raise their own, because then they know they'll have something to eat. So as you well know, you worked there last year and how busy we were, and currently we're adding on and looking forward to it.
Yeah,
because we need the room.
Yeah, I remember we did a thing with Dustin Meehan, and he talked about, I think it's neat how we've been able to adapt our business to grow over the last year, and we've changed stuff up a lot. But what makes you go every day to the shop to check on everything? I notice
I have to keep busy, to be honest with you.
Okay.
And I'm proud of that place.
Yeah.
And to me, the growth that I've witnessed, when we first started that retail, Edith was an employee, just hired. She hadn't been there very long. We could sit in there all day and not have a customer. But any business, if you hang in there long enough, and it's not easy, you don't start out real good. You just got to stick to it, which we have.
What's kind of surprised you the most about the meat shop, or as we're coming into 2021, what do you think is maybe you never imagined or thought that it could
The
be?
growth, what we're doing, what we're producing. Like I've told you many times, when I first started butchering, there was 7 meat shops. Now there's 2. And that's why we have to expand, to make room for more cattle, to take care of all the people. And that's why we're doing it, to take care of people.
Yeah. I know we had the family legacy barbecue sauces, and AP, great great grandfather Alfred Peter. Maybe you could tell us more about Warren's parents or our family as it goes back further on the tree.
Now that I don't have a lot of info on. I just know that like I'm dedicated to survive on my own. I know my dad had an house with his dad because he run the farm in Bellingham area, and then his oldest brother got out of the Merchant Marines and he gave the farm to Earl. And then my dad ended up moving to Shelton and started a dairy down there with a cousin. And so
Can you tell us about
Alfred Peter was, he used to, when he was old, they passed him around. Each family would have him for a while. And I remember his big handlebar mustache. And sometimes my dad would get mad at me, and I know he would see that handlebar and think of Alfred Peter. But I always wanted to please Dad. I know he'd be proud if he was still alive to see what we've created over there. But
yeah?
so,
How about logging, Bellingham, Shelton? I mean, do you miss the trees of that side of the state? Or how about, I know you like Once a Great Notion, the movie about logging, because it's near and dear to you. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about logging. And
not really. I was gonna log. I mean, when I got out of the service and went home, I applied for. I was gonna go to work for Simpson and set chokers up at Canyon River, which was the steepest part of the state. But getting out of the service, I just didn't fit into Shelton real well anymore. People didn't treat us right, and I just didn't feel comfortable there. And that's when I heard about Cudahy opening up in the Tri-Cities, because my cousin Mike Drona lived over here. And I came over and applied, which I didn't get hired, but while I was here, I applied for a couple other jobs. And Kennewick Disposal called me up, and I got a job with them. That was my very first job here. And no, I don't miss the trees. To me, this is home. I love the farmland. I love the scenery.
can you tell me about golfing with your dad, or memories you have golfing as a kid, and why you love golfing so much?
Because my dad worked all the time, but he did golf. So when I was little, he would take me out, give me a club, and I'd just beat the ball around. And in the summers, we always go out to Bayshore, and Dad would rent a cabin for us, and he would still work, but he'd come out to the cabin every night. We'd bonfire, cook food out in the fire, and golf. And that's when I took a hankering to it. And then in high school, I turned out for the golf team. I made the golf team, but that's when I went to work. So I quit the golf team and went to work at a grocery store.
So how many hole-in-ones have you had?
I've had 7.
Well,
Very lucky.